The thoughts, opinions, and general overall shades thrown on High at 9 News are those of the individual speakers and not those of High at 9 News, its audience, or its advertisers. The statements made do not constitute medical, legal, or financial advice, and for advice tailored to your specific situation, please consult with a licensed professional. Welcome to the High at 9 News Hour, where you will hear from cannabis industry experts and professionals from around the country talk about important topics while shining light on global issues and discussing cannabis as it relates to politics, regulation and reform, data and technology, science, research and medicine, family and parenting, art, celebrities and entertainment, fitness, sports, mental health and wellness, and plant-based medicines and entheogenics. Together, we are building a stronger community, fighting the stigma and creating change. With your host, Jason Beck, joined by special industry expert correspondents from around the country, and daily antics brought to you by cannabis. Coming to you live every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific time and high noon on the East Coast. And thank you all for getting high at 9 with us.
Go for it.
Yeah. Good morning, everybody. That's right. What is this? It is Wednesday. Oh, man. Wednesday, you guys. It is hump day today. Give me a second. I'm pulling my thing up. I apologize, guys. I'm a little discombobulated being not in studio today, so I do apologize for the inconvenience. But good morning. It is Wednesday, May 7th, and today is National Tourism Day. It's also National Interpreter Appreciation Day. National Skilled
People in the
Trades.
background who are doing all this stuff and smiling. Yeah.
Right?
Mhm.
Also National Skilled Trades Day. National Packaging Design Day. Shout out to Mylar bags, I guess, right? You guys?
Cool. There's like there's been a little in New York, didn't they last year? We had a little exhibit of all the history of the Mylar bags. Do you guys remember?
Oh, I think there was something like that. Yeah. I would call that more of
It was all the
call it more
I think it might have
a
been
police exhibit, call it, as far as, it's probably with JD Grudd, you know what I'm saying, showing off all of his big busts. It's also National Berry
exhibit.
What's that?
I think it was an art exhibit in New York. It was like a tribute.
It's also National Barrier Awareness Day. You're going to love this one.
Physical barriers or emotional barriers?
Oh, aren't they all the same, Dale?
Nah, I don't need trigger warnings. You may need to be around me, but
It's also National Roast Leg of Lamb Day today, you guys.
Ooh, I can get into that. That's a great day.
Yes. Yeah. Sounds like some bar.
Into that one. Into that one.
Yes. National Paste Up Day.
like pasties or what?
Paste. I think this is for all the kids in elementary school that share their paste, Dale.
Okay.
That's my guess.
My sick mind was thinking about women who could twirl pasties off their boobs in different directions. That's just my special talent.
Yeah, I'm glad you said it.
The paste over there, eating the paste.
Yeah. There's a whole new meaning to sharing one's paste, right, Dale?
Okay, I watched that one. Let's carry
National. It's also National Bike to School Day.
That's great. Go ride a bike.
And it is National School Nurse Day today, you guys. Shout out to all of the great nurses out there. Thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us. It's also high noon on the East Coast. And please remember to like, share, and subscribe to us on all social media platforms. You can look up above and down below to see exactly where we live on the internet. And we are live every Monday through Friday on YouTube, Rumble, Twitch, X, Instagram, Facebook, Kick, as well as on our very own website at www.high9news.com. So welcome to everyone joining us from any one of those platforms. And Jenny is not joined us yet, has she? I don't see Jenny Beth yet. So, all right, all right. So I'm going to roll into my first story today. I'm going to kick this off because Dale has a humdinger, and so I want that to kind of be more in the middle of the show. So let me tell you something, guys. This is super interesting, and I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this, because a Michigan pot shop owner is banned from operating in state after violations found at multiple businesses, you guys. That's right. Yusef Baccarat violated dozens of rules under the Michigan Regulation and Taxation of Marijuana Act, according to the Cannabis Regulatory Agency. The CRA posted a filing on its website on Tuesday that Baccarat was no longer permitted from participating in the marijuana business, you guys. Baccarat previously ran several licensed marijuana retail businesses where he broke the law, according to the agency. At a pot shop owned by Baccarat in Big Rapids, marijuana was sold to an underage undercover cadet with the Michigan State Police, you guys. An inspection the following year found non-working cameras and no electricity at the business location, which Baccarat never notified the agency about. How are you going to run this with no electricity? I don't understand that. Anyways, inside were unsecured marijuana products, including some placed in paper bags intended for sale, which had been removed from their original packaging that includes a required tracking number. At a separate pot shop in Bay City, the property's landlord told the CRA doors were found unlocked with no employees on site. There was also more unsecured marijuana products, including almost 1,000 grams of flour in unmarked bags. Baccarat is the first individual to be added to the Cannabis Regulatory Agency's involuntary exclusion list. And there are several names on the voluntary exclusion list, which include people who have signed a consent order and stipulation that resolves any disciplinary action they're facing. Being added to the involuntary list means they never resolved their problems to their attention by the CRA, and any license in Michigan must screen the list when hiring potential employees or doing business with anyone to ensure they are permitted to participate in the business in Michigan, you guys. Well, Michigan. I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this. How does this guy just leave these doors unlocked with all this product inside? Man, what is going on?
I think if you're gonna trap, you have to, like, whatever consequences happen, or the consequences that happen. But I have questions. The police said he left the doors unlocked, or were the doors unlocked? Because then we have a search and seizure issue. But
well, no, the police can just walk in there if the doors are unlocked. They don't need a warrant. Walk in.
Or is that what the police are purporting? Because if they were unlocked, holy hell! If they were unlocked, then you're the mastermind that you thought you were.
I mean, it's so crazy. So crazy.
The poison pill is something that I hope they keep track of, because if you're this stupid trying to run a business, you shouldn't be allowed to be in business, and no one should invest money with you. I mean, there was that a couple of pounds and then a bunch of other product just in a room with the doors unlocked. I mean, that's an invitation to have them stolen, and having products that don't have tags on them. Is this being diverted or inverted into the? If you're asked to take a test and you answer these questions, you should fail. You know, this is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
If you're going to operate in a gray area, you need to be smart enough to navigate them. And if you're not, recommend, if you are, stop doing that now, because they're cracking down on enforcement across all of the states, whether you have legalization or not. It's not a good time to be a cowboy unless you really have the brains and the balls to do it all the way.
Man, shout out to cowboys out there.
Sorry.
Yeah. What do you guys say about this, Yarrow?
First of all, I don't think whether the door locked has anything to do with whether police are able to go into a domicile or a business without a search warrant. Secondly, I was surprised to learn in this article that there are underage cadets. I thought doing drug buys. I thought you had to be over 18 to work for law enforcement, and then you could pose as underage. So I question the accuracy of the story. And thirdly, maybe they had some legacy roots. I mean, I grew up in an era and an area where leaving doors unlocked didn't matter because that wasn't your security system. Your community and those around you tended to actually look out for you. Now I know that we're going back to the Paleolithic era of cannabis, but I just I always question the news. I question where they get their sources. I always question whether they've taken any comments from defendants or defendants counsel. And I just know that a lot of this stuff plays out in the press, but doesn't necessarily mean that it's accurate. And I also don't understand this notion that how do we say this? Businesses that are selling cannabis, the idea that they would feel comfortable selling to underage people while still having a brick and mortar location is super crazy. Like if you're trapping, you probably shouldn't have an address associated with your nefarious activities. And I'm just a big advocate for two things. A, that kids really need to wait until their brain stops growing. And people can make money without having to cross what I consider to be that moral line.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When I mean, this is my thing with this is, if you sold weed to a minor, I agree that that's totally a problem. But what we also don't know is if this minor had some fake ID and represented himself as someone older, which I'm not willing to say is in the realm of possibly not happening also.
Yeah, that is a possibility, especially if it was a cadet working undercover. There's a high likelihood. That's also why I question the doors were unlocked. Like, I understand community and being good neighbors, but I still lock my damn doors. I'm locking my doors.
I feel like this guy, like all of a sudden you're walking out. You know what I mean? Like, what are you chasing some robber or something to where your doors are unlocked? Like, you have to be like doing something that's so important as being the last person out that your door's not getting locked. I find that a little weird, a little suspect.
I just think about the Breaking Bad episode though. Like, this is a domicile. Like, I don't no, you can't come in. This sounds like we need more details, and it should be a warning to anybody. If you're gonna be a cowboy, you gotta be smart one, and you gotta be able to back it up. Otherwise, I would not toe the line. Like, you're right. You shouldn't have an address.
I would say you're not a cowboy if you're selling cannabis to minors. You're an asshole.
Well, yeah, and that too. I'm just talking about if you're going to run trap operations. I'm not let alone. That's a big no.
There's enough overage lungs that are willing to accept flower. No need to let the youngins get in on it early.
That is so true. Oh, there she is. She's back.
Here comes. I think that you're underestimating Yara, because we trapped when trapping was trapping. Me, you, Jason, Dale, we trapped when trapping was real and trappers were men, right? And women like me. These modern day trappers are very comfortable and they think shit's safe. Just like people who are getting into the industry now, they think shit's safe. So let's keep in mind, like, these aren't your mom's trappers, Yarrow.
They don't make trappers the same anymore because they're not necessarily trapper.
Now the only trapping I do is when I can't shut my trap on High at 9 News.
We're gonna work on that, Yarrow. I have faith in you, pumpkin butt.
It happens to all of us, Yarrow. Don't worry about it, buddy.
Yeah. And we do want to wish a very, very, very happy birthday to Miss Anna Lewis, the CEO of Catalyst. It is her birthday. She's in the chat, and we want to wish her a very happy birthday today. And on that, we're going to roll into our first commercial, and we are going to be right back.
Oh man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, my left one, you know? But I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade, and in a GMP certified facility. So you know you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where I'm even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Tested. It's not a name, it's a promise.
Receding hairline.
And are we back? Yes, and we are back, you guys. We are back. And coming up next, that's right, it is Miss Jenny Beth Dills. She's the founder of Kind Cannabis, business that can help you get your life on track, your business on track, whether that's MedTrack or BioTrack. She's also the founder of Justice Served, a 501c3 that if you were on the track and justice impaired, she can help you get that back on track as well. Here to track star it up, it is none other than Miss Jenny Beth Dills.
Okay, good morning, good morning. All right, adding this to the list of shit you should not do. Yep. A cruise passenger who disembarked in Bermuda and asked customs officers whether cannabis was illegal was fined $2,500 after officials discovered she was carrying cannabis and cocaine. Pamela Walker is not who you want to go travel with. A 60-year-old passenger aboard Royal Caribbean's Liberty of the Seas arrived at Kings Wharf last Saturday. Royal Gazette reported that upon disembarking, she reportedly approached customs officers and asked whether marijuana was legal on the island. When informed it was not, she responded, "Well, I don't want to get in no trouble. If I had some weed, would you take it, or should I just go back and leave it on the ship?" That led to a search during which authorities discovered several plastic baggies containing a green plant-like substance, a piece of foil containing white powder, and 2 grinders. A further search of Walker's cabin turned up additional cannabis in the suitcase. According to prosecutors, the white powder was confirmed to be cocaine, weighing about 0.31 grams, with an estimated street value of $100. Apparently, in Bermuda, cocaine is still a lucrative business. The cannabis totaled 10.6 grams and was valued at approximately $1,000. Hey, that proves that prohibition creates value. So listen, she was cooperative, admitted to the offense immediately, and expressed genuine remorse, her attorney said. First of all, Miss Walker, you sound like a fucking great time. Second of all, you sound like an idiot. So if you're going to take your fun friends on vacation, make sure that they're smart. Go back to you guys.
No,
Jason?
If you go out with a woman like that and she acts that stupid, you should pay the bill and never call her again. Don't ever have children with someone that fucking stupid, because that's really stupid.
Yeah. It was dumb, Dale. It was quite
I so agree. Yeah, this is a perfect episode of what is it? What was that show? America's Dumbest Criminals.
Yeah, I didn't know I couldn't do that, officer.
Yeah,
This is Dave Chappelle skit waiting to happen. I don't want to get in no trouble. Jesus. I don't know. I mean, listen, there's this thing called Holy Ship that happens, and they disembark on this cruise, and there's Jam Cruise, which is a whole bunch of jam bands. And I had some friends that went, and they realized that as you're going through this tunnel to get onto the ship, that there were drug sniffing dogs. Because yes, when a bunch of ravers or a bunch of jam band kids are all getting on one boat, if I'm a cop, I'm like, guess who's saving on gas money today? He's not getting a steps in, and he's getting probably more arrests than usual. And shout out to some of my smarter friends who apparently did have some weed and stuff on them and stuff, whatever they had, I don't know. But one of my girlfriends noticed this and apparently alerted the other people in the group. She's like, "Hey, you're getting a phone call. We have to go out right now. You're getting a phone call." And the other girl's like, "Huh?" They got out of the tunnel and lived to tell the tale. So if you're going to be doing things like this, don't be a jackass about it. Like, she got this stuff onto the boat. She got through whatever checkpoints they had to get you onto the cruise liner. And then she like self-reported the fact that, like,
Yeah, why would you
if
even
she
ask?
thought the weed might be okay, she knew the blow wasn't. So why would you fucking blow the whistle on yourself?
And $100 a gram for weed, and that better be some pretty good stuff.
Sounds like some
You know?
stuff I'd smoke.
Yeah, Jason. All right.
Yeah.
I don't know. I picked the story because, Yara, you want to know why I pick my stories? Because it's fucking hysterical. Yeah.
Before
Well,
you
it should be a
Go
warning
ahead,
to
Yara.
people getting on
Did you know, is
cruise
she
ship.
a friend? Are you personally hurt right now because you're making this face?
I mean, I'm hurt that you're wasting our time on non-news. That's what I'm hurt about.
I think it's fucking hilarious, and I think it's great news, and it's a cautionary tale.
If you're going on a cruise, be real careful,
I
because they
think
do
your
check
clicker
for
is
drugs.
broken.
Or we could do, we already know that. That's why I love you so much. But if we were going to do, if you want me to do another story about how we're overtaxed or how another state's regulating synthetic cannabinoids, we can do that. Would you like to switch over?
Yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
Then you can grandstand again.
It's not Bust at 9 News. It's covering the hemp and cannabis industry. This ain't the industry. This is just enforcement against idiots.
Yeah, which is funny.
Oh man, it's a little train wreck. Dale, you have any other comments, or Sean?
Traveling, you're gonna take, again, if you want to play, like, you can, I really believe in personal responsibility and personal agency. So like, if you're gonna be a dork and do such things, be prepared to handle the consequences if you get caught. So if that's a night in jail, it's going to be a night in jail. If it's a whole bunch of litigation, be ready. And if you don't know, don't do it. And also, like, I didn't know we were still going on cruises in 2025. I'm just on the whole thing.
I wouldn't go on a cruise in 2005. It sounds like a terrible place to be. Trapped on a boat for 3 to 7 days with a bunch of fucking people I probably don't like. Sounds like a great time. Jarl's probably a cruise guy. Do you like cruises, Jarl?
I've never been on a cruise. I'm not even taking the one you're leading us to with this non-news headline.
Are you going? Yeah, well, you're here. You reached your destination.
I'd rather be keel hauled than have to hear you cover another minor bust with somebody. I mean, there's 8 billion people in this world. You want to cover every idiot's decision?
No, just this one, because it's a 60-year-old woman that got caught with a bag of blow and self-reported while saying, "I don't want to get in no trouble." Funny. Yeah. We're infotainment, Yarrow. I don't know if you knew what our headline was.
Yeah, I'll put the info in. You can do the tainment.
Yeah, okay. You put the taint in infotainment. We know.
I was gonna say that, but I didn't want to offend your fan base in the chat.
Well, don't. Try harder.
And that was fun, you guys. Well, we're going to keep this train rolling. We're going to roll right into Mr. Dale Schaefer. Dale has been an attorney since the Reagan administration. He has represented physicians, hospitals, insurance companies, cops, corrections officers, and for the last 25 years, he has specialized in cannabis law. He served a 5-year federal prison sentence for helping medical marijuana patients and managed to save his law license. He's blunt. He doesn't smoke them because they're ratchet and make your breath stink, and he's honest, and he's unconcerned. Public opinions, and especially yours. And he will show you how to piss up a rope and defy gravity. That's right, he's another of your favorite T.O. Loco, and you can now find him at his own law office at the law office of Dale Schaefer. It is attorney at law, Mr. Dale Schaefer.
Good morning, everybody. It's your favorite T.O. Loco and full of shiticus. Here we go. It's Wednesday morning, and my story involves Bell Costa Labs. We had them on a couple weeks back just as they were suspended by our cannabis Department of Cannabis Control here in Sacramento. And I recall making a suggestion, contact James Anthony, who's my former partner. And apparently they did. I don't know where they'd done it before I made that suggestion or afterwards. But on Monday, we had a hearing. I attended it, and it was pretty interesting. I wrote an article that I think they've posted up, and it's based primarily upon the pleadings from Bell Costa. Okay. And when I attended the hearing, what came out of the hearing? Now, the problem we have here in California is we've had these things called provisional licenses for a long time. They were only intended to be a thing for about a year as we transitioned to annual licenses. Well, it just never happened. Okay. And Bell Costa which is a licensed cannabis testing lab in California, got their first, what we call a temporary permit, I believe in May of 2018. A year later, they got their first provisional license. And at that point, the state was already kicking the can down the road. Like the DCC, our state cannabis agency, is so inept, they could not process license applications. And so they kept kicking these down the road. This 1 year provisional license, now it's set to sunset January 1st of next year. So we go from 2018 to ending in 2026. It's like, come on, this is 8 years. It was supposed to have only lasted for 1 year before you got your annual license. Now, this California is important because temporary and provisional licenses were not given due process rights. And the due process is a big issue right now. There's screams and yells across the nation for immigrants being, detained and deported without due process, if you will. A due process is fundamental to our constitutional system, and the federal constitution and most states' constitutions guarantee you a right to due process before your rights to life, liberty, and property are deprived. In California, this was not supposed to have been an issue, because if you're in the temporary process and you're trying to get all your ducks in a row, giving someone a year or so to do that before they get an annual license, and now you have vested rights in the license, didn't seem to be a problem. But they wrote these regulations to not give you due process rights for the provisional. The provisional then went on for years and years and years. If you don't understand it, setting up a cannabis business in California is a multi-million-dollar adventure. Okay? I don't think I've handled the setup of any business in California without either approaching or going over the 7-figure mark. So you invest a whole shitload of money into these businesses to get them up and running. And if the state can come in and shut you down without giving you notice of what they're doing and an opportunity, a real opportunity to oppose it and go in front of a neutral magistrate and ask questions, then you're in trouble. Okay. Now, James Anthony, who I used to be partners with, started out as an attorney in Oakland, a city attorney. So he knows the government game. And he took on the DCC in multiple cases where they were trying to take away people's rights to a license that was provisional. And they claimed you don't have any due process, and he challenged that and was successful. Well, there's a lengthy story here for Bel Costa, and you can look at my article, and it will give you sort of the history of them. But they checked every box. They did everything that they were asked to do from the DCC to get their license, and every year they applied for an annual, and DCC would rubber stamp giving them another year of provisional licenses. Okay. And this seemed to be going okay until the LA Times posted a story about our problem here in California with testing labs being willing to give out inflated THC numbers or to overlook what appears to be above acceptable levels of contaminants in cannabis. In other words, they were fudging numbers and fudging the system. Okay. DCC doesn't like to be embarrassed and have their pants pulled down. So they, reacted with a knee-jerk reaction to go out and try to enforce against people. And that's exactly what they did against Bel Costa. Now, Bel Costa kept asking, hey, what's going on with our annual license? We want this thing. It's going to run out in a year. Don't jerk us around. And once this article came out from the LA Times, the DCC went after him. Okay. And Bel Costa was trying to find out what's this based upon, and they got no information. Finally, as we get into the fall of 2024, they do a surprise inspection, and nobody knows the results, but there's a citation issued for like $30,000, $37,000. Not a little slap on the wrist, it's a big one. And Bel Costa went, oh, what do we do? How do we fix this? We want a hearing here. They offered them an informal hearing, which they went to. They wouldn't give them any information. Didn't have a neutral magistrate there. and they ultimately sustained the citation. Bel Costa said, well, we want to go in front of a judge. You can't just do this to us. Never gave him a hearing. As we roll into 2025, Bel Costa's continuing to ask, hey, our license is going to expire. What's going on here? They didn't get any information. It just got worse. And then in April, we had a Bel Costa rep on, and the state had just suspended their provisional license. Okay? And it's like, oh, now what do you do? Because you had to lay everybody off. You're done. You're basically, it's what a state will come and put a red tag on your business and you're done. You've got to send everybody home. You can't operate. That's what happened here. Okay? So Armada, my former law firm I work with, filed a petition for a writ of mandamus. They wanted the court to stop the suspension of the provisional, give them a hearing. Okay. And in the meantime, paperwork has to be filed. I mean, if you practice law, you just don't get to walk into court and start jabbing. You've got to present papers. You got to serve on the other side. As this was going back and forth, okay, it wasn't clear they were going to get there. So they filed for what we call a temporary restraining order. This gets you in front of a judge pretty quickly. Before they could get in front of the judge, the DCC denied their annual license and their provisional license expired. And according to the regulations, once it expires, they can't issue any more provisional licenses in 2025. They all run out January 1st of 26. You no longer can use them, and you can't get a renewal of a provision in 2025. So when I showed up to the hearing, it appears that the judge had just gotten wind of this. James Anthony and Bob Finkel, my former partners, had just gotten wind of this. They didn't have a chance to respond. What the state said is that, hey, you can't, there's no way you can order this provisional because the statute says you can't do it. Okay, so you're shit out of luck. And we denied the annual license. And oh, by the way, under the Administrative Practices Act, you can go appeal that and you get your day in court. And you don't get to come back to a real court, I call them, a civil court, until you exhaust all your administrative remedies. So, the Bel Costa's standing there with their dick in their hand going, okay, well, what can we do here? Can't do anything. And the judge is like, I don't know. I mean, you didn't get a chance to respond to what the state said about what they claiming is a lack of jurisdiction. So I'm going to kick this forward for a few weeks, and they're coming back May the 23rd, and they have a pleading schedule now to address what the DCC did here and this due process problem, okay? But the court was, said, okay, you may have an argument for this lack of jurisdiction, but I'm not really happy with this due process problem. You string somebody along for 6 or 7 years, they spend millions of dollars, and they have no vested property rights in that license. That dog just don't hunt very well, okay? So that's sort of where we're left. And for those that don't understand, the DCC will play this game with you. They'll string you along, they'll pull the rug out from underneath you and then claim, hey, you got no rights here. Go play the administrative law game, where anybody who's done that knows that, it's a kangaroo court. You don't really get the same due process protections you get in a criminal court, even a civil court. And so good luck, because if you go through that entire process and you lose, you can then appeal back to the Superior Court where they are right now. So they want them to go down this rabbit hole and come out the other end, and maybe we'll entertain you then. I don't know how it's going to turn out, but I'll be back watching this, and we may be able to get some more people from Bel Costa on here to talk about what's going on. But this is another example of the state of California bending you over with a barbed condom on and just not having any concern for your screaming and yelling. We don't care. Shit out of luck here. So I'm going to throw this back at you for your comment. But this is ugly. It's a part of California cannabis that I really don't. It's one of many that I'm disgusted with. And I hope the courts will step in and stop this nonsense. I'm throwing it back to you. What do you guys think?
So a large portion of this that sucks is the reason why the annual licensing process took so long is because it took the municipalities and the state so fucking long to figure out what their secret requirements and their secret process was going to be, right? So are we able to go ahead and get a negative declaration? Or are we able to go ahead and say that we're not creating any infrastructure that's not already there, and that, you know, there's nothing happening, and so we can just deny and waive CEQA? And it took an egregious amount of time to figure out a form to waive CEQA, which is insane, because the CEQA, for you guys at home, is the California Environmental Qualities Act, something that has existed for a very long time and works with all other portions of business and anyone else who's throwing up a building in the state of California. So we should have been able to streamline this process very quickly. What I'm seeing right now with the DCC with most of my clients is, if you're going to get your annual and it's time for your annual to renew, you are very, very, very likely to have a no-knock inspection. Previously, the DCC would contact you. They'd send the owner an email and they'd say, hey, we'd like to, you know, come in and schedule a time to come and inspect you. They're not doing that now. They've hired a tremendous number of new field agents, and they're using these as trainings to go in and literally bend people over. I have a client right now that's going through an inspection. It's his renewal time, and they asked for our DVRs. I've emailed them for 4 days in a row asking for an address to send said DVR to. They're not responding. They've frozen his metric, and it stopped his business operation since Easter weekend because they weren't able to come inspect. Why? Because we let all of our employees go home half day on Friday for Good Friday. Like, so sorry. It took me another 2 weeks for you guys to schedule an inspection, not because we weren't trying to be inspected, because the inspectors were not responding. So the lack of due process for operators is absolutely exorbitant. In the meantime, they're asking for $30,000, $40,000 in licensing fees, because in the city of LA, if you didn't have your annual licensing application fee filed by a certain point in time, you lose both your city and your state license, and you don't get the opportunity to refile, which is absolutely egregious, as their system was spitting out false invoices and telling them not to pay. Hold on, we have a known system error. So if we know these things don't work, then why are you surprised when you end up in court with an operator who you've just taken their entire livelihood from? Now, on the Bel Costa situation, I won't totally speak to it, because I think when we went through the conversation, there were some things that were like, well, we could have fixed it. I think when you're looking at public safety and lab operations and things like that, there are things that you shouldn't necessarily have to have an opportunity to fix. But there are things that could have been fixed easily, like, you know, a shared login, which is a dumb thing. We know we can't do that. Don't get caught with your pants down over something very simple. But the lack of due process and the lack of responsiveness between the DCC and operators when they're diligently trying to fix issues and diligently trying to comply is a problem.
Mm-hmm. Dale, do you think that any of the allegations that the DCC has made has warranted such a drastic response in their methods against Bel Costa?
I don't think so. I mean, I've had many clients who were called in or given a citation. And we found a problem, tested stuff, and in their case, suspension's based upon aspergillus, okay, which is ubiquitous. Every plant has it, and cannabis has it all over the place. And when you test it and the aspergillus levels are low enough to pass inspection, if you don't store it in a condition that inhibits the growth of aspergillus, you're going to find it down the line. So if you find it, it doesn't necessarily mean that you missed it when you did your testing. It maybe means somebody was shitty in their storage, and I've had these issues with, you know, distributors and stuff like that. I don't think so. This could have been remedied had the state wanted to. See, that's the underlying tingling feeling I'm getting in my butt, that the state didn't want to help these guys. They wanted to torpedo their business. Okay. And one of the factors that was surprising to me is that Bel Costa got sued in federal court and state court, along with a bunch of other testing labs, by a couple of testing labs, and I can't remember their names. I'm bad with names, but there was somebody affiliated with one of these companies that sued Bel Costa and others that was involved in this investigation. Now, and as an attorney, I start screaming, conflict of interest. What the fuck are you doing in the middle of this thing? You should be, you know, put another room and a wall around you to stay away from this thing. Apparently they didn't. I don't know what kind of animus was generated inside the system towards Bel Costa, but what happened to them tells me is that they wanted to pull the rug out from underneath this group. For whatever reason, I don't know. And one of the things I mentioned when we had the Bel Costa guy on is there are no standards for calibrating your machines. There are no standards out there the state puts out of how they want you to do the tests. So if the state does a test that's different from what you did, and it's not calibrated, equipment isn't calibrated the same, you're going to get different results, even though the testing was done properly. These are issues that should be worked out in front of an administrative law judge. Okay, we pay a fine, we make some corrections, maybe we put you on probation for a minute until we make sure you're doing okay here. But to pull the license, and these guys from the Attorney General's office, the DOJ, they just were smug son of a bitches. I was watching their faces. They didn't give two shits that they had just ruined a business, put 70-something people out of business, out of a job. And, Bell Cost had put $6 or $7 million into equipment. They didn't seem to give two shits about that. That concerns me because we have tons of problems with the cannabis industry in California. And I'm right now working on a couple of them. I'm screaming bloody murder. This is one of those level of regulations that needs to be looked at and have something seriously done about it. I hope the courts step in because this is just not right.
Yeah, but will the question of the courts stepping in always becomes debatable because what we are seeing is a reflection of standard practice when it comes to the law. Like we see this reflected when you're talking about stacking charges, and you see it reflected when you do go to the judiciary and there are outcomes that surprise all of us. So it's just, to me, a reflection of the larger pattern of they understand that they can wait you out and they understand that it will kill you. And we shouldn't make a mistake about that. And I take that so seriously because it's very helpful to hear these stories out of California and to dive into the nuance because we're literally writing amendments for legislation, hopefully, to flip things over here in Texas. And these kinds of stories are the ones that we really need to learn from. This has so many different levels of how do we hold ourselves accountable in different layers, but then how do we also give earnest business owners an opportunity to remediate? And then how do we stop the system from bleeding you dry when they know very well that's all they have to do?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
What do you guys say?
Love.
In a legal sense, though, since the case of Marbury versus Madison, courts step in and put the Constitution over whatever rules they have. If they don't match, the rules are thrown out. Okay, that's where the courts can step in. Now, due process is something that's baked into the federal and every state constitution. Before you deprive somebody in a business sense of their property, you got to afford them, basic due process. Here's the notice of what we think you did. Give us the evidence so we can have our expert look at it and give us a fair hearing in front of a neutral magistrate, if you will, to listen to both sides and make a decision. Okay? If that's what they do and it turns out, hey, we're not going to tolerate you fucking up these tests like this, we're not going to, you really did it and we're going to take your license away, you were given due process, okay? But have the rug pulled out and then have them just smile like a possum eating shit as you're going down the tubes, it really irritates me because, I've got a chubby on for the state of California right now and how they have fucked up cannabis. I am just pissed off and I intend to do something about it, okay? This bullshit going on here, the overtax and overregulation and the seeming lack of care for the half or more of the industry that's died in the last couple of years because, they don't care. They want their money. Mm-hmm. The lack of concern really irritated me as I was watching these attorney generals. And I've been in court with attorney generals before, and they basically are smug motherfuckers, and you just have to kick their ass. But when they don't give you any tools to kick their ass, and they think, well, you can't do anything to us because, we let your license expire and you can't get it renewed. And, we denied your annual, you can go talk to an administrative law judge. In the meantime, every employee's shit out of luck. They got to go on unemployment. You've lost your $6 million investment in equipment and they don't care. And that bothers me.
Yeah. What do you guys say, Jarl?
I think that cannabis wants parity, right? Cannabis wants to be treated like any other industry. And we say that time and time again, whether that's the regulations and requirements for a consumption lounge compared with a cigar lounge, or its taxation structure relative to say, the adult bev industry. And the taking of a license is a gut punch to a business because without that license, there is no business. So it becomes valuable, and we see the way that affects the markets, whether it's a limited license market or not. And without it, there's nothing. So I'm spending my day tomorrow morning going before a planning commission in Yolo County to argue that a cannabis entity that has done a less than perfect job shouldn't be subject to being completely out of business because a local licensing process and a non-renewal could scuttle all the millions of dollars, all the entrepreneurial effort, the real estate owned, the highest and best use, everybody's efforts, employees, all of that is gone. So license is really important, and the due process afforded license holders is really important. And if there's parity, if it's treated the same way outside of the industry as it is in the industry, at least we have the same imperfect system. But when we have conditions like Dale talked about, where provisional licenses aren't afforded due process, or where you've got the judge, jury, and executioner with these executive branch agencies that make law and then execute law in the course of how they do their duties, it's not great. It's not good, and it's an impediment to onboarding more capital. It's an impediment to having a more predictable runway for a business being able to continue to be in business. And I think whether at the end of the day, in capitalism, we would like businesses to be able to rise and fall based on the execution and vision of the people in those businesses, and not be so vulnerable to their licensing status as the reason why they can't continue to be in business. And what comes up for me is like the health department. Like if you were a restaurant, Michelin starred or not, and all of a sudden there was a rat scurrying across the cutting board in the kitchen, that's a big deal. But you know what? Rodents happen. I don't know that the French Laundry deserves to be out of business and lose its Michelin stars because a rodent found a teeny little hole in the side of the building and came in and scurried across the cutting board. Like, that's not great. I don't want that plate of food, but I also don't want to see that restaurant out of business. And so things happen. Businesses make mistakes. Operators are imperfect. Teams don't always execute at the level that they want. And what are the parameters by which that's an infraction, a wrist slap, a fine, or you know what? We're just pulling the plug on your whole business because we can. And the people who are pulling the plugs on those businesses, again, to Dale's point, whether they're smug or not, they hold so much power. But at the end of the day, they're not stakeholders in the way that the investor or the entrepreneur or even the customer is. And so I think it's pretty ripe for improvement.
Yeah, no, 100%. And there are parameters set forth. And here's the unfortunate thing about the parameters and the way they're written into the regulation is they are set forth as different, different levels of violations with different penalties. Those penalties range from a small fine to instant revocation. So there's, where do we fall within that parameter? There's a huge scale of what can happen to you, depending on if your inspector is having a bad day or not. So I think that there's supposed sorry, what?
I'm sorry. Like one idea we've been kicking around because we're looking at amending certain things is, I'm so glad you guys are having this conversation because it's enlightening for sure. Like the first few penalties are civil, not criminal, and then repeat offenders, like you have a level of repetition, and then you have a level of like, the specific offense that you can build in. And I'm asking, is that maybe how we get around that? Because we're literally writing the language right now and don't want to pigeonhole ourselves into the same mistakes if any movement happens.
Well, I'm going to finish up. So there's not criminal penalties because this is licensed cannabis, right? So we're looking at regulatory fines and loss of business and being disenfranchised, which, some of these people probably rather go to jail at this point. Unfortunately, the way that it happens is there's a system where you go from, you have your initial inspector who comes in, there's a supervising inspector, and then that report is generated and they go up, and instead of saying, hey guys, can you explain this? Somebody who never came to your property, who you've never spoken to, who is sitting in some ivory tower of a desk up in Sacramento, sends you a letter that says whether you may continue your business or not. And if so, what these penalties are. Some of the lower level offenses have very small penalties and don't include instant revocation. The ones that include instant revocation is anything that's considered a public safety issue. So whether that is diversion of cannabis from the market, whatever they've deemed to be publicly unsafe. So, you know, when we're looking at how these things have to stack, if you look at somebody who has traditionally been a trapper, whose risk for reward is kind of been how they've always functioned, right? If I know that I can sell 10,000 pounds the unlicensed market and it's going to cost me $5,000, I'm going to do it. I'm sorry. I just fucking am. And that's just the way it is. So I don't know. I don't know what the answer is, but the answer is there needs to be clarity and there needs to be conversation between the body, the government that is governing us, and the operators who are trying to fall within those regulations. And I think that's where the big issue lies, is the lack of recourse when you are told that you're getting more than a slap on the wrist, or you're not told anything and all of a sudden your metric is red.
Fair enough. And that we are going to roll into our next commercial, and we are going to be right back.
I just ordered the summertime strawberry salad when added steak on top here at Anna's. Make sure you do the same thing too next time you're in downtown Long Beach. Come on down and check out Anna's joint on the 400 block of Pine Street. They have amazing selection of beers, foods, and when you come down here to Anna's, you can even challenge me to a game of shuffleboard if you want to lose. Did you get that? So, next time you're in downtown Long Beach on Pine Avenue, make sure you stop by Anna's Joint on the 400 block. Not only do they have Anna's Joint, this restaurant and bar, but they also have the amazing deli next door, and then next door to that they have a very exotic flower shop. You may want to stop by and say hi.
Hopefully we can thank
All right, guys, stop whatever you're doing. Make sure you smash that like button. I know we'll appreciate it. You'll appreciate it, and YouTube will appreciate it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're not subscribed already. And all of the articles that we cover on today's show, you can read directly on our website at www.highatnightnews.com. Says, oh, and we are back, Jenny Beth Dills.
Who am I introducing next?
Sean or Yarrow, it's up to you.
Oh boy. All right. Let's go here. He's rude. He's ruthless. And if you're standing next to him, he's probably about shoulder height. Don't let the size fool you. This real estate guru is coming to bulldoze and try and piss people off. Yarrow Kubrin from under the lily pad in the Shire.
I'm not mad at that introduction, actually. I think it's just because I have clinical issues and I'm so thirsty for attention that I'll take your negative attention over none.
Yeah, you know.
But thank you, Jenny. And what I promise today is I'm not covering a lady who's busted on a cruise ship. Oh, don't say anything. No rebuttals during my presentation. Thank you.
We already covered that one.
Yeah, that's right. And everybody was on the edge of their seat over that one.
Me too.
So let's get back to the news, and I'm happy to help deliver some of that. So hot off the press from Marijuana Moment, and absolutely intended for shots fired on this policy. I mean partisan, I mean political, I mean cannabis news show. DOGE touts cut to federally funded cannabis research. Hot off the press today. Marijuana Moment, Tom Angel.
DOGE.
So without further ado,
DOGE.
No, I think we're dodging here because it is not as accountable to its own mandate as it would like you to think. The Department of Government Efficiency, DOGE, as those who love it like to call it, is touting the cancellation of a federal contract for potency monitoring of confiscated marijuana samples worth $142,839 that the National Institute of Drug Abuse awarded to the University of Mississippi. The Department of Veteran Affairs is seeking price quotes for contractors who can help analyze and explain scientific evidence on medical marijuana to clinicians and the public, including potential benefits for conditions like PTSD, as well as potential risks around cannabis use disorder. The Federal Bureau of Investigation partially approved background checks. Language in Delaware's revised marijuana law, blah, 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 blah. Let me just sort of like not even get into the details. I'm not going to read like 27 minutes on an article like Jason does, because I don't want to put you guys to sleep. I'd rather you guys hear the banter back and forth between me and my more conservative cohorts. So let's just get this straight, right? This agency came in, and in their attempts to eliminate the bloated fat from the trillions of dollars that the federal government is spending, they feel that $142K going to the University of Mississippi for cannabis potency testing is fat on the federal level. So I would like to hear what the rest of my cohorts say, because too much agreement kills a good conversation.
Oh man, I just want to know, did MSG shapeshift again into Yara?
I am not as handsome or buffed.
I'm here for it.
Or spiritually evolved. But his loss on the show is a loss. Luckily, he lives near me. He's a good man. Our kids go to the same school. MSG is the shit. He is absolutely a flavor enhancement, just like the other MSG.
Not a spray terp. That's crazy. Okay. Yeah, Yarrow. I mean, first of all, it is Doge. Dodge has another D in it.
Yeah.
And thank you for not reading 27 minutes of story, but getting in 3 insults. I'm so proud of you. You did a good job. Good boy. Good boy. I'm scratching behind his ear. Hercules, Hercules.
Yeah, you see, you got that. That is exactly what that was.
That's why we're friends. That's why we're friends. I mean, listen, government efficiency just doesn't, those words don't necessarily go together for me.
No, they don't.
But I figured I'd soften the blow before Jason gets his panties up his butt, because I know it's coming.
Oh, no. I mean, so Yarrow, what actually was eliminated? They're talking about testing for what?
The VA research program.
They're talking about testing cannabis and canceling a federal contract for potency monitoring confiscated marijuana samples. And if I was going to
agree with that. I totally agree with that. If you think that a state can't even get testing under control, you think the federal government is going to get testing under control, and we don't have any standardization across a federal platform for testing. So yeah, this is a total waste of money. I'm all the way on DOGE on this. DOGE that shit out of here.
Oh my God, you're riding the DOGE meat pole. Here's the thing, all right? We don't know whether this, because it's a very small article, or I chose not to bore us with all of it. We don't know whether it's for regulated or unregulated cannabis. But the idea that the federal government doesn't have 142K, I mean, that's like the stuff you find in your jeans when you pull it out of the dryer for the federal government to understand the potency of cannabis. I think if I was going to look at this, through an efficiency lens, I can understand that it might be hard in a vacuum to justify this expense. But if I look at it through an industry lens, I would say that the more resources the federal government puts into understanding cannabis in general, the more progress we're making towards what we hope is either rescheduling, descheduling, or federal legalization, right? And so I just don't know that that's the place they need to cut. I think if we wanted to really create some accountability, we would get rid of corporate welfare and have tax reform at the highest levels of income, whether that's persons or entities. And we don't have that conversation going on. So to me, this is like chumming the water for those that already support the effort.
I understand. I'm going to push back on Yarrow's forehead just a touch here. So you're kind of speaking out of both sides of your mouth, Yarrow. You get all pissed off and up in arms about cannabis enforcement. as far as in the illicit market, right? And, you know, we've all had little run-ins with the law that were made our buttholes a little tighter, right? And I think confiscated cannabis, potency testing with a confiscated cannabis would lend me to believe, and Dale, correct me if I'm wrong, it sounds like something that has been obtained in some kind of enforcement issue, probably an illicit bust, right? Because the federal government isn't going into our licensed pot shops and taking our money or taking our weed anymore. Thank you, Governor Rohrabacher. Or not Governor, Congressman Rohrabacher. Hey, maybe Governor, that would have been great.
Yeah, yes, but
hold on. Let me play. So Yarrow, what you're telling me is you would like some of our tax dollars to be spent to find out how good the trapper's weed might have been.
all right. So first of all, I have gotten up in arms about the idea that regulated cannabis is being taxed to fuel prohibition and enforcement action against unregulated cannabis. Not that all enforcement against unregulated cannabis is bad. If you've got a cartel grow on a federal park and they're pouring pesticides into Eagle 20 into the water, like clearly no bueno. That's environmental degradation, right?
Sure.
The thing is this: if the feds aren't willing to test the potency of confiscated cannabis, how are we to know that it's not covered under the Farm Bill as hemp and under the 0.3 threshold? It seems to me that knowing the potency of biomass that's seized is part and parcel to understanding whether there is a prosecutable violation to begin with.
Well, that'd be part of your defense. And then you call Dale Schaefer and he would say, hey, get some of this tested. Here's what I'm going to do. Like a potency test is cheap, right? An R&D potency test is not an expensive cost. If I'm looking at 5 to 10 years in a federal prison, you get fucking better bet your ass I'm willing to pay for that potency test out of pocket. And my attorney is damn sure going to demand it. It's my defense, right? I'd rather have my test than the federal government's test, honestly.
Well, I'm not a big fan of the University of Mississippi. For a long time, they grow shitty weed. I don't think they should have ever been involved. And,
well, maybe they need to test it so they know if they're growing better.
Well, but there are multiple DEA licensed labs around the country, and they routinely send their weed in there to have it tested to make sure it is, marijuana or the THC levels are prosecutable. So that's going on all the time. To send money to the University of Mississippi, I mean, these machines are out there. The gas chromatographs and mass spectrometers, they're all over the place. You can get those tests done. Why do you send it to Mississippi? I like to put them out there and chop them off and let them float away. We can get better weed grown in the trap market, okay, than what they do. And I don't want to send them any monies, but I'm not advocating for what they're doing here. I just don't know what the correlation between the THC levels of confiscated weed is and studying its effects on PTSD. That one I'm having a little trouble connecting the dots there. Why would they be doing that when you can have it tested at a DEA lab as part of the confiscation of it and being ready for prosecution? You know what the fucking levels are. It ain't that hard to find out.
I think there's confusion too about funding. So DOGE, whatever, they've made the cuts as it relates to this particular testing. And my question is, wait, how long has this flower been on the shelf? What are they actually testing, and to what end? Like, for why? For more bogus studies? No, thanks. But then there is an allocation of resources through perhaps the Department of Veteran Affairs, and they're looking to study. Actually, they're reaching out looking for people to study the test potency for PTSD. So it's like they took funding, they cut it in one area. I'm not saying that they reallocated it. DOGE specifically reallocated it because the VA request had already been existing prior to this cut. But I think it's really, instead of it always being a gotcha thing, sometimes it's a matter of figuring out how we actually want to allocate resources and do it smartly.
And thank goodness we have DOGE to allocate and get rid of this wasteful spending. Thank God. Because testing potency is totally ridiculous, and I'm all for removing all potency numbers on all flower products altogether because it's all stupid.
I love
potency
Jason's new perspectives.
and for research to actually like understand
They need to know the potency for research. That's not even a component in actual research. That's totally ridiculous.
Right, because the ratio of cannabinoids for researchers would be irrelevant to the
ratio of a ratio of cannabinoids is not potency testing, Yarrow. That's a totally different type of test.
Oh, you mean potency is not from a cannabinoid?
You're totally missing the words. You're totally missing the words. And on that, we're going to roll into our final commercial, and we're going to be right back.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. I hear there's more layers to it.
Oh man, your knees still bothering you, man?
Yeah, my left one, you know? But I'll tell you what, I've been using this new CBD cream, and it works like a miracle.
CBDs? I done heard about them CBDs. I was out there on them Twitters the other day, and I heard they get you high as a kite.
Well, not this stuff. This stuff is tested. Every batch, all the way through, pharmaceutical grade, and in a GMP certified facility. So you know you're not going to have to worry about flying high.
GMP certified? I might have to try some of this out. Where I'm even find this?
You go directly to aimhighhemp.com and they will ship it to your door right away. Tested. It's not a name, it's a promise.
Okay.
All right.
And we are back.
Come back on that.
Yes.
All right. Coming up next, one of our newest correspondents, Sean Savaje out of Austin, Texas. She's a veteran, a mediator, and let's see what you have this morning.
Yeah, so I have an update for you guys on Senate Bill 3. We've seen our second subcommittee substitute come through since last week when we got the first one, which was 123 pages of I guess moving us to hemp and cannabis regulation with THC. So from the Texas Cannabis Policy Center, an article, Senate Bill 3 substituted and reformed significantly. I'll give you the quick overview through the article, and then I'm going to give you a little bit of inside baseball on the back end. So updates, we've got 17 more pages of updates. Basically, still no vapes. Still no flower. They restricted access, so we have an age gate, 21 plus. Hemp, the previous language in the original committee substitute was 1,000. Like operators have to be 1,000 feet distance from a school. They've fixed it and only 300 feet. So yay for the happy cactus. Who, if you guys might remember, when Dan Patrick was going in and doing his no-knock inspections, he went to the Happy Cactus and they actually carted him. So they've fixed a lot of language, and they also fixed a clause where you can have edibles now, but the packaging, it can't be attractive to children. It's got to be tamper evident, child resistant. And it can't bear any resemblance to soda candy snacks, you know, the whole trademark issue. So they have adjusted the language so that we can have edibles. So we're talking about actual THC in edibles and drinks in the state of Texas. Now, what does that all really mean, though? They're still banning hemp flower. They have made a lot of retail restrictions. One thing, so right now, like, what have I been doing? This is why it made it so much fun to come on to the show today. Because I've just been writing amendments for the bill all morning, and we've been working with various partners to figure out what kind of language, if any, we want to put forward. This is the debate that's being had in Texas. As it stands, SB 3 is really interesting. What the House is sending back, and by the way, the word on the street is that they want to keep adding amendments and substitutes, like more. So Texas, send them in. Give us all of your amendments, because we want to flesh this out so much that the House and the Senate have quite the debate in front of them. What the House has done is they've made note. There's also been a letter that's gone through the House and the Senate, from the House to the Senate, addressing that no House bills have really been heard and that the Senate has pushed a lot of legislature through. So there are other issues, including funding for public education in the state of Texas. Like everyone's heard the national news about the school voucher bill passing, but we actually still need to pass our public education budget. So, and that we're having some squabbles here in Texas. This has been the most intense legislature we've had in quite some time. So we are writing amendments down here in Texas. I am asking y'all because we're having some interesting fallout. We've heard that there have been some organizations that have, and none I will name, and none I can confirm, but some organizations that had already made concessions. Like in this updated bill, we have 10 milligram per serving edibles, which is actually fairly reasonable when we're considering adding THC to our program when you look at other states who are legalizing. That's if we're going to do this, because right now we have an open and free market. And so we're really hesitant to put many rules at all. The best laws are the ones with the fewest pages, right? Not over-regulation. And so we're having this debate amongst ourselves about the best way forward, really, for the industry and also for the state, because eventually a regulatory body will have to be created, and we're trying to be good partners and work with them. Texas is all about friendship, right? But there are reports that some coalitions have gone to legislators ahead of time and given concessions, like perhaps offering 5 milligram edibles and more restriction, accepting the restrictions on flower, which is astounding because we already have 10 milligram. We already have it in the bill. Guys, don't go backwards. We're working so hard to move this forward. Scarcity breeds fear, and anyone who's going to operate in cannabis or hemp cannot be afraid. Okay? This is the real deal. So that's what's happening here in Texas. We are at a point where the House is sending the Senate, if the House hears it, once it's scheduled. And I understand people want it to be fought to get to calendars, but I believe it will be scheduled. And if it goes to the Senate, we need to add as many amendments to actually structure a well thought out industry if it's going to go forward, and pray that they will debate it and set up a smart industry, or they'll be so pissed off that we sent SB3 back as a legalization bill that they can't reconcile it and it dies, and we get 2 more years, Texas, to get things right and to figure out how to get our legislators on the good side of this with us. So that is where we stand, and that is why it is so essential to actually digest, like, what are the policy issues you're facing in other states. Dale, thank you for that article. And to bring it to the floor for conversation here, because we are literally writing it out here in Texas. We're writing the language. But the reality is many operators would be happy to see SB3 just completely die on the vine. And we'll come back to the ledge. We'll come back for the 90th in 2 more years, and we'll have another conversation. Giving it to y'all.
I'm fine with that. Just let this thing die. Back, start over again. But at the same time, the sensible legislation makes sense. You know what I'm saying? Some, child-proof packaging, yada, 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 all of that type of stuff. That all makes total sense. And I don't think anybody is not in agreement with that. But, THC potency caps, all that type of stuff, that stuff is just ridiculous. And all it does is, increase the illicit market.
Yeah. I mean, Jason, I think you'll probably agree with me on this, that the danger and you probably will too. The danger when you throw too many things at the government that they really don't want to, on a subject that they really don't give a shit about to begin with, or vehemently against to begin with, they're just going to throw their hands up and say, hey, you know what? Fuck you. And do nothing.
Yep.
And that goes beyond giving you another chance. It goes to a point where you're going to need to elect some new officials that even have the fucking bandwidth and don't get a headache the first second they read cannabinoids in something that's being introduced to them. Like there's only so far you can kick an ass that you need to be kissing a little bit to get what you need to get done.
Yeah, and I think we're Texas here down here. If you play too rough, you won't be heard. You're not going to be able to be a part of the conversation. Then it's just you can't. You can't do it that way. And business doesn't move that way in Texas. You got to have red and blue come together or you're out. So it's been interesting to see the legislators in the House are listening, though, because they added these amendments and they want to add more. And we're seeing this really interesting dichotomy play out where our House and our Senate are not in lockstep, the Republicans specifically. So, because this bill is returning as a legalization measure from a Republican House legislator, you know, so it's interesting. And it came to the House from a Republican senator, both out of the panhandle. It's just, that's really unusual for Texas to have that much, to have a bill changed in such a fashion.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we're okay if it dies. That's okay. We're okay with if nothing happens. Everybody gets 2 more years to get really educated, and the market's not so insane out here that we're self-destructing. We're actually fairly balanced.
Well, the one problem with that is that if Dan Patrick calls a special legislative hearing, that which could throw a whole wrench in that, because he's going to be so mad if this thing dies on the vine. But
if they treat this bill like a fetus, they'll never let it die.
Oh man, stop it! Bills are not fetuses, bro, but people are corporations.
In special session, I think we would be talking about legislation then, if they are able to achieve that.
Mm-hmm. And thank you so much for this, Sean. Dale, do you have anything you want to throw in on this before we move on?
Well, the idea of the perfect being the enemy of the good. If the good is this, then, I don't know what to say. Maybe it needs to be rethought. I'm just so fed up with politicians right now because they can't seem to find their ass with both hands. They're all getting money dropped in their pocket for re-election that influences what they do. And unfortunately, too many of them for sale. And what they do, for our industry, we can't get them to even pay attention to people are trying to do this correctly. You're just tripping them up every chance you get because you don't give a shit. And that really is the bottom line problem. All of us involved in here have tried our best for years to try and get this to work. And you look at the politicians and they just don't seem to give 2 shits about this. It's unfortunate.
Yep. Oh, so true. And on that, I'm going to roll into our final story of the day. We're way over time today.
You have a super chat.
Oh, we got a super chat. Oh my goodness. Oh,
you do give a shit about Wagyu.
I care about all the super chats always. Thank you so much to Seaward, who says big thanks to Jenny and all the High at Niners who had wonderful suggestions for how to be high at 9 on Oahu. Aloha, you guys. Shout out to you, the Seaward. I'm glad you used the community to help you out, and glad there could be some, you know what I'm saying, make this all happen. Now, great state of Ohio, you guys. Local officials are fighting for tax money from marijuana dispensaries, you guys. That's right. In Austintown, Ohio, local officials are continuing to fight for their funds from marijuana dispensaries in their communities. Austintown trustees Bruce Shepus and Robert Santos will be speaking on behalf of Austintown and Mahong County as a whole in Columbus on Wednesday, you guys. Ohio voters legalized adult use marijuana back in 2023, and according to the ballot language, communities with a dispensary would benefit monetarily. In a quote, a 10% tax that's divvied up to various departments, Santos said. One in particular is 36% to the hosted community. So us is actually going to get a dispensary. So 36% of that tax was supposed to come to us, which can range anywhere from $200,000 to $700,000 per year, depending on how well that dispensary does. Things changed when House Bill 96 passed, reducing the amount communities with dispensaries would get, and also adding the stipulation that they would get that only for 5 years. In a quote, this is just another form of money that we can receive that's not property tax that will help offset these costs for a certain period of time. And the better it does, the more funds that will come down the pipeline, they say, Santos said. In an additional quote, we're hoping that the Senate changes their mind and gives that money back to the host community, he says. Santos will be going as president of the Mohawk County Township Association, while Shepas will be going to represent Austintown. This will be Santos's second trip to Columbus on the matter, and in a final quote, "This is not my local elected officials to go down, and I think it's very important for these senators and state representatives to hear from us. We are down boots on the ground who are in need, and we are struggling, and they need to start understanding that these are the things that we need to be partnered together," Santos said. Well, look at this. You also have, it's not just everybody, operators getting screwed in cannabis. It's also these municipalities in Ohio that are getting screwed from their state after they said, hey, we're going to give you all this money if you allow this in your communities, and then they're totally switching it all up on them. And I can't wait to hear what you guys have to say about this.
Yet another government entity that didn't want to do what they didn't want to do and have found a way to not do it.
Well, my problem is when you lead with, oh, we're going to put a lot of tax money in your pocket. If you do this, you should be that's like Lucy and, pulling the football. Come on, dude. You're going to do this one again? Okay? And one of the overriding, factors here is they just don't want to do this at the central level in almost every state. I mean, they will if you hold a gun to their head or if you pass an initiative like we did in California. They'll do it. But when you watch what they actually do, they're trying to put money in the hands of the people that they want to put money into. The rest of them, don't give a shit. And local jurisdictions are struggling right now. They get mandates that are unfunded, and they have to pay for law enforcement, a lot of things that go in and around the cannabis industry. And, there's no good answer here if everybody's not on board and understanding that the people in this nation want cannabis. They think it's safer than alcohol. It should be treated more like alcohol and not like depleted fucking uranium. Okay. And we're all interested in protecting the children, but your kids can go buy weed from the guy around the corner and nobody gives a shit how it's packaged. So until we get rid of the trap market, nobody seems to want to target that, making it easier to be a lawful operator. They want to make this so goddamn hard you can't. And the trap just does, they don't care. And that's the problem we have. Promising people money that you don't deliver, and they're mad and don't want to do it. That's not the industry's fault. You got tapped, 10%? I mean, we're still arguing over 15 to 19% here in California, which is absolutely ridiculous when alcohol is 1% for beer and wine, and for distilled spirits, 3%. And the state's generating like $10 billion in tax revenue from alcohol. Come on, guys. Can you get your head out of your ass long enough to figure out you can do a different model?
I totally agree. Any final thoughts on this, Jenny Beth?
I think we're over time.
I think we're over time. Yeah, Yarrow's on mute. Yarrow's on the call, so you know what I'm saying. Yarrow, if you had anything to say, you have anything to say, Yarrow, on this?
Well,
we close out.
We've covered this before, and it continues to be like he said, Lucy moving the football.
Yep.
And Charlie Brown still falls on his ass every time.
He does.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
And Lucy ain't that cute, so I don't know why he keeps doing it.
So, the thing is, this boils down to them taking revenue away from the way that we got cannabis passed in a lot of areas was with what was going to happen with the tax revenue. And it bought support for regulated cannabis from stakeholders that might have otherwise not been supportive. And Ohio, aside from the ACE versus TENS thing, had a pretty good rollout, right? For adult use. And so... So taking the tax money, it's just obvious politics, right? And it's a gank move, but I'm kind of laughing at it because they shouldn't have been taxing so much to begin with, and now they're fighting over the spoils of it, and none of that money is really. I mean, ideally, the tax revenue gets reinvested in the areas where the tax revenue is collected. And it's really clear that's not happening. But that also isn't happening in other states. Even in my state, that's not happening. And so the siphoning up of this money and then allocating it in ways that it wasn't initially intended or communicated it would be used, it's kind of like, I mean, what did you kind of expect? Like, we should never have trusted, nor should we trust the government is going to have sort of a fiduciary approach with the best interests of communities in mind. So it's upsetting, and I have ample anger for it, but it's not surprising.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Fair enough. Sean, any closing remarks on this before we close out?
No, I think you guys hit it on the head. Lucy's moving the football, and to expect the government to have a fiduciary responsibility to the public or any entity is, a bit naive at this stage.
Fair enough, you guys. And thank you all for joining us and getting high at 9 with us every Monday through Friday at 9 a.m. Pacific and high noon on the East Coast. Big shout out to our audience and supporters for tuning in daily and listening to the insanity that is the developing cannabis industry. Huge thank you to Aim High Hemp Distribution, Tested, and Catalyst for helping us keep the lights on over here. And thank you to our correspondents for being absolutely amazing. Thank you to Cannabis Sativa L for giving us a reason to do this every day. And thank you to Cloud Media Partners Anthony out there in the metaverse. And thank you all for tuning in and getting high at 9 with us. We are America's #1 daily cannabis news show.